everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Bryony and I'm one half of the Indecisive Readers. As you can see, if this is not your first video of mine, I'm in like a new setup. I've got a taller, what's it called, tripod. It's not completely tall and my ceiling is awkward, but it is stood up on my bed, and so I thought I'd try and stand in front of my shelves for a change, because you know, that's what normal people do when they're talking about books. I also thought it would challenge me to film shorter videos because I don't want to stand up for as long. But yeah, I'm just going to jump in today with my November wrap up. In November I read 9 books. It was quite a change from the month before where I read nothing but ebooks, it seemed. This month I only read 1 ebook and I read 4 physical books and 4 audiobooks. However, I read so many physical books kind of because I made myself, because 3 of them were annotated books and 1 of them was an ARC, so I didn't have like another option to read it. But I really enjoyed them all. My average rating over the month was 4 stars, which was incredible. I had so many 4 and 5 star books and only 1 3-star. And yeah, I'm just gonna get in and talk about them because otherwise I might be here for a while. The first one I read in November, I did read as an audiobook, but I do have the book physically, and that was Over Sea Under Stone by Suzanne Cooper, which is the first in the Dark is Rising trilogy. This is, I don't know, I think it's about a group of, well, I'm not quite sure what the whole series is about. I believe it follows like a boy named Will. However, I can't remember if Will is one of the brothers or a kind of later child. I'm not quite sure. I haven't watched the film in a while, so I'm like not quite familiar with it. However, the first one follows 3 kids who are brothers and sisters, and they go on holiday to somewhere and they start going on adventures because there are these secret forces and they find maps and things, and it's all exciting. I thought it was a really fun book. I thought it was quite a fun, adventurous middle grade. It's quite an old book. I mean, you might be able to tell it's very, very yellow. It's very flimsy now, but the first one came out in 1965, so it is quite old. Therefore there are a couple of like content warnings. I'm not sure if they're quite content warnings for like blackface and things, but generally I thought the book was really fun, was really interesting. I couldn't quite like remember which child was which, but that's just because I was listening to the audiobook, so it just didn't quite like stick in my head. However, they all had like distinct characters. I liked the other side characters, although again some of them slipped through the cracks, but I feel like that's because it was an audiobook. Although I have watched the film, which is the second one in the series, I didn't remember anything about it. I thought it was genuinely fun. Like, it set up the story really well, but also set up the larger story, and the ending, how it ended, left me a little bit shocked. There were some surprises in it I didn't know, and I was like, and this is vaguely what Legendborn by Tracy Deonn is kind of not based on, but inspired by. And so because I love that one so much, I thought I'm going to have to try and start this because it's been on my shelf for so long. I definitely enjoyed it. I rated it 3 stars. The next 2 I read I'm going to talk about together. Again, they were audiobooks, and the first one was Before the Devil Breaks You, and the second one was The King of Crows by Libba Bray. Before the Devil Breaks You is the 3rd, and this one is the 4th in the Diviners series. I started this series back in March, I continued it in October, and then I picked up the 3rd one in November, and then I finished it and thought, I'm going to pick the next one up straight away. And I found it was much better this way, obviously, because I remembered stuff. When I went into the second one, I couldn't remember who the characters were and things and what had happened. But because I dived straight in, it meant I didn't have to like refresh my memory every time I went in, and I found it really good. As soon as I finished Before the Devil Breaks You, I'm like, I'm gonna get The King of Crows, and I really enjoyed it. I think Before the Devil Breaks You was my favourite. I rated it 5 stars and I rated this one 4 stars. I'll be honest, I can't remember exactly the distinctions between the 2 because I read them back to back, but I did really remember enjoying Before the Devil Breaks You. I enjoyed parts of this a lot more, so I'm not quite sure why I rated it 4 stars, but because of plot reasons, certain characters who maybe didn't interact all that much before have to interact together, and I feel that's really fun. I like when kind of characters are forced into unusual circumstances and it makes them kind of readjust everything they know and act in different ways, and I thought that was really fun. I think I enjoyed these 2 books more because the issues in the books were kind of closer to the forefront. They were dealing with them directly rather than kind of hearing about them from behind. We got to learn a bit more about the lore and the kind of, I don't want to say magic because it's not magic, it's ghosts and like demons and things, but we got to learn a bit more about that and I thought that was really interesting. I really enjoy the characters in this. In this there are gay characters, there are people of colour, there are disabled characters. One character in particular is an asexual lesbian and I think how her identity is handled is really well done. There were circuses, there were ghost towns, there were mental hospitals, so like trigger warnings for that. But it was really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. I liked how it kind of concluded in the end. The characters I thought were really interesting in the third one because characters that I'd previously not liked, I suddenly formed a new opinion of. Likewise in this one. And yeah, I just thought it was really fun. I enjoyed the kind of conclusion to it. The cat's itching. I will be slowly collecting these books when I see them cheap, but yeah, at the moment I have this one and the next one, but that just proves to you that I enjoy it. It's kind of one I'd come back to and definitely maybe would like binge read next October, maybe? Who knows? The next two books I will again be talking about because they are like two in a series. So the first one is The Pale Dreamer and the next one is The Bone Season. I'm talking about them just holding this up because The Pale Dreamer is stuck in at the back of this. As you can maybe see, I did annotate it this time. This was my second reread. It was my second reread within about a month. I read this last in October. I read The Pale Dreamer back in January. And because I wanted to annotate it, I ended up just reading it straight away. And that's what I'm planning on doing next month with the next two, so that's fun. But I really enjoyed annotating it. The Pale Dreamer was always 5 stars for me, but when I first read The Bone Season it was only 3 stars. It went up to 4 stars last month, but this month it went up to 5 stars just because I enjoyed the reading experience. I think I really like annotating books, specifically Samantha Shannon books and books that I'm familiar with, so I feel like listening to the audiobook helped. But Samantha Shannon writes books that are made to be reread. She leaves so many threads of plots that are to come, so I'm sure like once the 7th book has come out I will reread this again and go, how did I miss that the first time? But I didn't know that would be relevant, and I really, really enjoy it. It is something I'm going to come back to shortly, but I thought it was a really fun experience. I like learning more about them. I really fell in love with Warden in this and his relationship with Paige. I thought it was so much more interesting because the first time I was like, it's a bit weird. The second time I didn't really feel anything towards it, and this time I was like, oh my god, I love him, he's so sweet. And there were a lot of notes I've made. Not only have I like tabbed it, but there are a couple of times where I have like actually written stuff. So once I finished my reread and got to The Mask Falling, I think Sam and I are going to do a podcast together and discuss it. The Pale Dreamer specifically I've always liked because it kind of explores the world in a easy way. Like it kind of eases you in before you jump straight into all the world building that Samantha Shannon doesn't like in the first book, and I like getting to see them interact with each other, and I think it's really cute. I think Samantha Shannon's writing is beautiful, and yeah, really, really enjoyed this reread. So the next book I finished was The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the final book in the David Bad trilogy, which was one of my favourite series from last year. I was delaying reading this because, I mean, it's like really chunky. It's about around 800 pages long, and also I hadn't read the first two in over a year, so I just thought I must have forgotten everything. I had forgotten a lot, but I just in the end decided to dive straight in because I thought I'm just going to keep delaying it otherwise. And whilst there were a lot of details I forgot, I fell quite easily back into it. I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, but that might be because I was confused, so I feel like upon a reread I would like it more. I really like getting to see the larger world. I find this with a lot of fantasy books. I like ones that are kind of, I don't want to say claustrophobic, but set in one place, but then when they expand out, that's what I really like. I like seeing how the politics change, how the magic system change and things, and I really enjoyed seeing that in this. I liked seeing the characters in this. I liked seeing how they grew from the first books. Characters that I really liked in the first ones, or characters I was like less in love with, I found I liked or disliked more, or were just more complicated. People aren't good or bad in this, and I think that's what's really interesting. There are of course a few characters that are bad, and there are of course a few characters that just do good, but I don't think it's clear cut being like this is good, this is bad. It's like political, and that makes sense with the story. Despite it being a really dark book, I will put trigger warnings down below, there were real moments of joy in this. There were moments that made me really happy. There were moments that I was smiling at, that I could just imagine, and it was lovely, and I really, really enjoyed it. I quite liked the ending as well, that it wasn't just kind of it was tied up, but it wasn't like a happy ending, and I thought that was better. And I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really nice conclusion to the trilogy. It was rich, it was interesting, there wasn't too much like political stuff. There was in places, and so I did sometimes get lost there, but also I think that was down to how I read it, because sometimes I'd read it before bed and therefore was tired. I really enjoyed it, thought it was a fantastic conclusion to the series, and we'll definitely be coming back to the whole series at some point to reread them. The next book I finally finished in November was The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I have been reading this on and off since the start of May. I read some in May, then stopped. Then I read some in July, then stopped. Then I was like, in November, I am determined to finish this book. And I have technically finished my read. I haven't finished my annotations, if that makes sense. Basically, when I was reading it, I was like tabbing it. So I was tabbing characters, world building, foreshadowing, that sort of thing. But I was also drawing on it. Here is a kind of example of something happening, and I haven't done it on this page, hence the being behind on annotations, but I was kind of writing what happened in each chapter. Let's find another one. So there, and kind of I was doing lots. I wasn't just tabbing it, and I found it such a fun experience. And I'm like really sad I'm done with it now, because this has been kind of relaxing for me. Like every night I'd come up and I'd read 50 pages or I'd read 20 pages, and I'd read and I'd annotate and I'd draw and I'd colour it in, and it's just been so nice. I'm glad I've still got like some bits to do with it, but I am gonna miss having something to pick up in the evening and just sit down and just turn off, because I have read this before, I'm familiar with the story, which didn't necessarily help. There was one point, it was like chapter 64 or something, and I was like, I know something's going to happen in this chapter, but I don't know how it's going to resolve itself, and that is actually making me feel worse, because I know it's going to work, but why? And yeah, I really enjoyed it, would definitely recommend. I cannot recommend this series enough. It's once again a series that grows on you every time you read it. First appearance of dragons I've written on that. I haven't written on any other one. Really, Max, you're like wobbling the thing again. But I really enjoyed it. Once I've finished with it, I'm going to do like a flick through and show you all the bits I've done with it. I've painted the map. There's my map. This is like the start. Then I've painted my map. Then at the start I was doing like a little illustration at the start of every chapter. It turned out to kind of be the end, but it would depend on what I had to draw, and then I'd sometimes do it along the side of the page. And I don't think I can tell you how much I love this book and how much it means to me, but like I genuinely cannot say anything wrong with this. And a lot of the criticism, or one of the main criticisms of this, is it's 800 pages, and then the final kind of climactic battle happens in like 1 or 2 chapters. But I can tell you, having taken 6 months to read it, that's fine. 2 chapters seem like plenty of time. A lot happens in those 2 chapters, and a lot happens throughout the book. For it being over 800 pages, I don't really think there's a lot of downtime. There's obviously time where less happens, but it's always building up to the next thing. And yeah, obviously I rated it 5 stars. So the next book I read in November, I am going to have to hold up with my jumper over my hand, but you'll see why in a minute. The next book I read was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. I'm having to hold it like this because it is the proof copy I read, and it's like that soft matte, I think it's called. But basically if I touch it, it just like smudges, it gets all the grease possible on my hands off onto the book, and it makes me really sad because it's such a pretty book. As you can see, it's like shiny, and on the front it says, "This book contains classified and magical information. Do not open without the proper permissions." Seriously, don't open this book, otherwise bad things will happen. I mean, monsters, aliens and evil magicians taking over the world, kind of bad. Can you handle that? Yes? Read on. The Bureau accepts no responsibility for magical injuries, supernatural frights or alien abductions. You enter the Bureau at your own risk. No. Very sensible. Return this book using the enclosed envelope. Obviously I opened the book because I rated it 5 stars. It was fantastic. It's such a fun middle grade. It's about a girl whose brother goes missing, and she decides to go to the place where he was working to find out why. And it turns out the place he was working is magical and full of like magical creatures and monsters and magicians, and it all starts to go wrong from the day she turns up. I thought this was such an interesting book. I thought Amari was such an interesting character, and such a strong character. She's grown up in this world where in essence, everyone hates her because she's different. She's black in a primarily white neighborhood. She has to have like help from underprivileged kind of scholarships, and then she goes to this new place and thinks it's all going to be better, and it kind of isn't, which is sad. But she like rises above it, and she's fierce and she's powerful, and she makes like some wonderful friends, and it made me really happy. And then the end, like, you know when you read a book and you just want to like throw the book across the room because you are shocked, but also you don't want to let go because you want to know what. This, I was reading it at like midnight, and I'm like, but I obviously couldn't shout because everyone else was asleep, and it was really dramatic, and I really liked it. And it's like Men in Black for kids, and it was wonderful. Like, the characters were interesting, the relationships between them was great, the world building was fantastic, because it wasn't just like your usual magical creatures, although there are those. It wasn't all that. It has kind of an element of training, which is always quite fun, kind of like a school vibe. I really liked it, and would definitely recommend when it comes out. And I definitely recommend it when it comes out. I think it comes out on January the 18th in the US and January 21st in the UK. I'm not sure about the other ones, but I will be part of the blog tour for it, and I think it's around the time this comes out, this video. So I will link it down below, but it's really good. And the final book I read in November, I genuinely wish I hadn't read, not because it was bad. It's like, the reason why I wish I'd read it next year was because it's like now vying for the position of favourite book of the year. And I'm very frustrated that that happened in November, because like for 2 months I've been calling Legendborn my favourite book. And whilst this hasn't necessarily toppled it, it has skewed all my previous statements. But that book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I've never read a Schwab book before, and I don't really know why I picked this one up as my first one, other than the fact that everyone was currently talking about it, and I went on my library app to see what audiobooks were available or which ones were coming in, and this one was available straight away, and I'm like, yes, me please, I'll read it. And I didn't expect to be blown away by it as much as I was. I rated it 5 stars, and it was so good. I didn't cry. I wasn't one of the many people who have cried at it, but I could have done. That ending was sad. It broke me, and I only finished it yesterday, so my thoughts are a little all over the place still, but I really enjoyed it. It was such a interesting and beautifully written kind of exploration of human existence. It's not just people are good and people kind of move on. It's about the marks we make in the world and the relationships we have with people and what effects those can have on people. And it was really sad. Like, I felt so sorry for Addie LaRue, but also so hopeful because of her. She's not like upset. Well, she's not upset in as many words. Like, she is at times really upset genuinely, and I don't blame her, but that's not all there is to her. She is happy at times, she's optimistic, she's joyful, and being sad is just part of that existence. And I thought it was so well done. I really liked it. It was so good. I don't know if I can put into words like how much I enjoyed it, just because I finished it recently and I didn't write many notes on it. I have written a review though, and it was really good. I thought it was going to kind of focus more on the present day, because it kind of splits between 2 timelines. It splits from when she originally made the deal and her present life, but it does both, and it does both a lot. I really liked how it was done, because each kind of part was introduced with a mark she's made on the world. It's the best way to introduce it, and it was just really good. I don't know if I can say any more. So these are all the books these are most of the books I read. I think there's only like one missing gap for the book I didn't read or don't currently own, even though I only read some of them physically. I do have most of them physically, but I really enjoyed this reading month. I thought they were all fab. If you have also read any of them, let me know, because I want to discuss some of them. They were fantastic. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in another video. Bye!